Welcome to Documentary First, an inside look at a first-time filmmaker's journey. I'm your host, Josh Lindsay from the Movie Proposal Podcast. And with us is our first-time and award-winning filmmaker, Christian Taylor.
Hello, Josh Lindsay. How are you?
Hello. Hey, we're having a party today.
We are. You know why? Because it's Wednesday? No. It is our 100th episode.
Oh, wow. Yay.
Whoever thought we'd make it to this far? So we brought a whole bunch of fun friends with us today. So why don't you introduce everybody and then we'll jump right in.
Okay. Well, with us, as always, is our trusty dusty research extraordinaire, button pushing guy, Jason Rugg.
Hey there.
Hey there. Jason, do you have a different camera? Like, your camera looks you look good in that camera.
Yeah, I was actually able to hook up my cinema camera, and so now I have like a $3,000 webcam.
Yes.
So it's buttery smooth behind me. It's beautiful.
Looks nice.
Well, much improved. Okay. And with us all the way from California is the music man himself, Jeff Kurtenacker.
Woo!
How's it going, Jeff?
Hey, Jeff.
Great. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
And with us, we've got three more people. We've got, I'm not sure what order we should do this in, but Jonathan Liu, am I saying this right, Liu?
Yeah.
Yay!
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Jonathan Liu. Nice to have you here.
Behind the scenes for the podcast. And then we have Jason Hoban, who helps mix the podcast. Hello, Jason.
Hey there.
You sound like Jason Rugg.
Jason. Right?
I love that humor.
And then the brand new guy, we have a podcast producer. I didn't realize this was getting serious, Christian. We now have a producer, Brad Stair. Is it Stair?
It is. Very good.
Okay.
Very
awesome.
good. Hey guys.
Welcome, Brad.
How are you guys? Thank you.
Good. We're so happy to add you to our podcast family. I really wanted everybody to meet the behind the scenes guys. So that's why Jonathan Liu is here and just sort of explain the process a little bit. It goes from us recording. Jason Rugg is taking the notes and he puts them in our little Trello, and I upload the recordings for audio and video, pass it off to Jason Hoban, who is also our location sound and post-production sound for the film. And then we pass it to Jonathan Liu, who then you can tell what you do, Jonathan, because I have no idea once it goes past Jason Hoban what actually happens.
Every week, once a week, I'll get a message in Trello, our management site, and then I'll upload it to Libsyn, which is our podcast distribution service site, and that goes through to Spotify, Apple, iTunes, and wherever else you can find podcasts.
Yeah, and it's been awesome. So that's how come everybody can listen to this, and then he also uploads it to YouTube. Yeah, so people can watch it, through YouTube if they want. So it takes this whole team to kind of make this podcast happen. And I have not been 100% on top of scheduling everything. It's usually always done at the last minute. And I'm kind of tired of living that way, which is why we are bringing on Brad. Brad, tell a little bit about yourself and how you came into this podcast family and what you're going to do for us going forward.
Yeah, so I came into this family basically by taking a chance. I have a little podcast called the Everything is Okay podcast with some friends of mine that we've been doing for the last 5 years. And we invited Christian on to be a guest on our podcast. And after we got done recording that, we all enjoyed our conversation with her. And as I kind of sent a thank you of, coming on, I took a chance to say, hey, I'm looking to possibly expand my horizons. And if she knew of anything, and she was gracious enough to invite me to be a part of y'all's family. So here I am.
Yeah. It's awesome. So we're glad to have you. We're hoping he will help us take things to the next level. We'd really like to do some fun things and really improve the podcast in several different ways. So that's going to be Brad's job. But before we get into, what we're doing next, I just want to tell you guys, especially you, Jonathan, and you, Jason Hoban, how much I appreciate what you do. That you're faithfully willing to volunteer each week to make sure this podcast gets produced. And those of you that are listening, if you appreciate this podcast, please, send a note to Christian@normandystories.com, and I will pass it on to anybody on this panel, to let them know how much you appreciate them. So thank you so much, Brad. We look forward to getting to know you better and for seeing the wonderful changes you're going to bring to the podcast. And hopefully we'll have you back on once you get further in.
Sounds great.
I have a question for Brad.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Ask away.
I was trying to look up your podcast just now, and I came across a podcast with two cartoon guys without their shirts on smoking cigarettes. Is that your podcast?
That is not us. It sounds really interesting. I might want to check it out, but no, that is not us. Our podcast, if you look us up, you'll see the state of Oklahoma with three guys in the middle of it.
Okay.
And that is us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, because if you look up Everything's Okay, the first one that comes out is what I just described. So,
interesting.
Yes.
So now I know what we're up against. We're up against some guys with their shirts off.
If you're watching this, that's what came up. So
nice.
Your competition.
Nice.
All right.
I need to work out a little bit more, it looks like.
Hopefully, I think the podcast I was on will come out in about 2 weeks. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Yep.
So we will share that on our social media when that comes out. But thank you very much for coming. We have about 15 minutes or 20 minutes to get the rest of this podcast in. So we'll have you guys back. Thanks for stopping by.
Okay. See you later.
All right. Bye, Brad. Bye, Jonathan. All right. Now we're down to just a core few. We wanted to start with the film, core team. Bill was supposed to be here with us today, and he got pulled away last minute. So unfortunately, he is not here. But we have some exciting news today, Josh. Do you have any questions for me?
Yes, Christian. Do you have distribution yet?
What? Distribution, you say? I want you to know that yes, we do have distribution.
Hey.
Woo-hoo-hoo. Super exciting news today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Lay it on us.
Yeah. So we have signed a deal with Factory Film Studios. They are located in Canada, and they have asked us for North American distribution rights. So what that means is they will be distributing the film in Canada and United States, of course, and they're hoping to release the film on broadcast channels and then some streaming services, then DVDs, starting around D-Day this year. So that's incredibly exciting. Now we can get really serious about fulfilling all the distribution deliverables that they need and start looking for when it's going to come out and the rest of the world can watch.
So is this the same company that you've been, we'll say, courting for the last umpteen months?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is the same company.
So how long, give us an idea, how long have you been in negotiations with them?
So, do you remember back when I started with the Trailer Film Festival, which was like in 2019, I submitted for the Trailer Film Festival, and maybe like in, I don't know, March, April, May, somewhere around there, we were chosen and we were selected to participate in the film festival. And then that ran for 2 weeks. This was one of the distributors that saw our film through that film festival. And they made us an offer of distribution right then after they watched our film. And they sent us a contract, and those contract negotiations took a really long time to make sure that we got a really good contract. And we had our lawyer working on it. We had Hunter working on it, and we had to work on a few behind the scenes issues that we had before we were really able to sign the deal. And it was really interesting. It was an interesting process, and it was long. It was not easy. I will tell you, there was no upfront money. A lot of people asked that right away. There was no upfront money. It's just a matter of, they've got the ability to license the film for 5 years. And then it was a matter of percentages that we would receive once they did a deal with the History Channel or TV channels in Canada and stuff like that. So we do not have international distribution. So that's something that we're still pursuing and trying to work out. But yeah, it's exciting news for today.
So if you had to guess, they, at that trailer film festival, they offered you a proposal. Fast forward to today, what percentage is still intact, would you say? Like 80%, 90%?
Of the original contract?
Yeah.
Well, it was significantly changed because the initial contract that they send, and I've learned this from dealing with 3 different distributors, it's just a boilerplate contract, and it gives, you very little, and it's usually a really bad deal. And so I'm not sure if they're waiting to see if you're just going to sign that bad deal or if they're, expecting you to push back so they don't really fill in a lot of really great details. I don't know. One of the problems, I want to dedicate this podcast to the things that we have learned from the beginning of the film. And that's why Jeff and Jason are on here, because I want to hear from them about some stuff they have learned over the years. If they had to pick like their top 3 things, the number one thing I think that I have learned from this, because it did impact distribution, was not having legal agreements set forth in the very beginning from people that I was partnering with. And because those were not, set out, legally drafted and signed by every party, it has taken me a year in order to have an agreement between a partner that, where the deal went very sour. And because of that, that impacted my ability to do this distribution deal, which is one of the reasons that it took so long. But that contract has now been signed. That is behind us. We are moving forward. And so my biggest piece of advice is, before you collaborate with anybody, make sure that you have a written agreement in place, and do not skip that part. So that's my number 1 lesson. Jeff, how are you doing today? What lessons have you learned?
I'm doing great, and I'm super excited about the distribution deal. When you told us that, it was fantastic. So I think we're all happy, as just the awards. Also your filmmaker award you just won. All that stuff, yeah. I think is great. So it's just exciting to see the film, get that traction and get that momentum. So it's fun to be a part of it. For me, I would say the number one thing, it's a little selfish, but the number one thing I learned was that I could actually do this. And I think probably everyone involved in this project feels some sense of this, right? Because we're a largely untested group of filmmakers. And so I think we all had ambition, and we aspired to create something fantastic without a track record of ever creating something fantastic. So I think there was really feeling our way through the dark for a certain amount of this. And for me, I know in my creative process, that was definitely true. I'd never worked on a longer feature length film before. So I wasn't sure I could do it. So for me, it was just the process of actually proving to myself that I could do it. And that was just a huge, kind of feather in my cap, just from a soul standpoint. So that was great. I appreciated kind of going through that fire and coming out better for it on the other side.
Yeah. And you went through a really rough fire with me. Learning how to do.
That's not necessarily true.
It's so funny. We were just at the Chandler International Film Festival. I win this Best Woman Filmmaker Award, and somebody comes up to me and says, "Is it true you really never did this at all? Like, you didn't even do a small project before you took on this, 90-minute doc?" And I'm like, Yep, that's 100% true. I never did one thing. So yeah, proving it to myself, I have to agree with you. That was it was pretty much a shocking thing. Jason Hoban, good to see you. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Great to see everyone.
So tell me about you. What did you learn?
Oh man, a lot.
Don't mic 5 different people and send them all over a cemetery in Normandy at once?
That's probably kind of running with what Jeff said. I learned that I could do it. I could really do some things that I would have never imagined possible. And yeah, to think that we've gotten this far. And I started with you when it was on a concept, right?
Yeah.
We were working on just a trailer. So to be a part of everything and all the things that we've been through, yeah, I've learned a lot that I can do this. And I think the biggest thing that I've taken from that is also that we can do this. The teamwork, the behind the scenes, everyone that's involved from working on the documentary to the podcast. It's there's a lot of people that make these things happen, and a lot of great teamwork. What I love about the podcast is, you've had your moments where you're like, okay, we didn't get into this film festival. I didn't win this award I was nominated for. And you kind of have those moments where you like maybe feel like you're losing your momentum. And then we get on the podcast and you reflect on your success. And then you have great encouragement from Josh and Jason. And it's just such a positive thing to be a part of. And to have this support the project, it's just been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, I just remember, I remember when we were thinking about sound and we needed a location sound guy, but you had never done that before. You had been a post-production guy, but you're like, I think I can figure it out. And, we all were like that. I think I can figure it out.
Yeah, but that's interesting. The amount of pressure there is, right? So you're over. I met Jason when we were over in Normandy, and you guys are doing the principal photography, and he's wiring people up for interviews and stuff like that. If you don't come home with good audio, I mean, a lot of those shots are ruined. A lot of those interviews are ruined. So having not done that before, how are you dealing with that pressure and that stress of making sure that you're getting the best audio possible?
Yeah, I mean, that was a very intense time for me. So yeah, I had done very little location, and I was very intimidated by the idea of taking equipment and gear that I didn't use daily, live and breathe through. I mean, I use mics, preamps, and everything like that, right? But field equipment is very much different from a post-production facility, right? And so to prepare myself for that, I got my equipment and I carried it around and I recorded everything. I walked around my house with it. I walked around the city. I did everything until I felt really confident. So I think a combination of nerves, a lot of nerves, and some confidence helped me pull it off. But it was challenging at times, but very rewarding because, I at a point in my life, I was like, I need something to motivate me. I kind of feel like I've gotten to a good place with everything that I'm doing right now in the studio, but I want to do something bigger. I want to challenge myself. So these were all those opportunities, and I have so much we could talk about that made it interesting.
We're going to have you come back. I just noticed the time. We've got Josh, do you have till 3:50? Do you have like 10 more minutes, or do you need to go in like 5?
I have 10 minutes.
Okay. So yeah, we are still going to have to talk to you again, Jason, and hear more of that stuff. One of the things that I thought was really interesting and very challenging, particularly during COVID, was that we never really had a proper final sound mix session. And so, Jason, why don't you talk a little bit about, about that and what was missing and how challenging that's been?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is we need to be in a room together so that we're listening to the same mix in the same environment so that we can
on the same equipment.
Exactly. So we know exactly how things are going to sound, because things will sound different if you listen to them on your headphones, through your TV, through your computer, however. So it's really important to get together on that final mix. So when we make notes, we're going off the same notes. And so there's been a lot of challenges with that. We've run into issues where it's just not translating the same way. So somebody may think something's too loud in one area and someone else may feel that it's perfect. So yeah, we've been finding creative ways to solve that and finding ways to work around with it. But it's a tough time for sure.
And when he says people, he means Bill and me and Jeff. Because it is the three of us.
The team.
It is the three of us that have to decide, with the mix, you're looking at voiceover, sound effects, music composition, and you're looking at the right levels of all of those things. And so Jeff is going to have his idea of how he wants the music to sound. Bill and I will have our idea for different things. So Jason's got to manage all of that. So yeah, anyway.
Make it work.
Thank you for that. Okay, to you, Josh and Jason Rugg, what have you guys learned since this began?
I'll go. I think, what's helpful about being on this podcast is hearing the stories. And it's usually, a week of, okay, here's everything that's terrible that happened, and we're probably going to have to shut down, right? And you never said that, but that was the feeling, right? And then the next week there was a win. And then the next week there was a setback. And the next week was a win. And after a while, you get this, my perspective is the feeling of like, no, you have momentum. You may not feel like it. You have enough wins that you're making a movie, right? Things are happening. But when you're so deep in the weeds, you can't see the bigger picture. And so I think just taking steps forward, regardless of how you feel, if this is what you want to do and make a movie, then you go make the movie, right? You keep going. I always, my mom always tells a story. When the first time she took us to Disney, she was exhausted from going around all these parks. And I just wanted to I begged her, like, let's go back. And she was just done for the day. But she said, all I got to do is put one foot in front of the other. And that's all she worried about. And I think if you worry about that with this, you make progress and you make a film, which you have done. So
yeah,
I think that's
true.
Good perspective.
And I do think the podcast, you're right, Jason, helps because it provides some of the perspective. You can look back and you can see how far we've come when you stop. And Jason and Josh, you guys have been so good about doing that, particularly when I get discouraged. So thank you for that. Jason Rugg, what else have you learned?
I think the big thing for me is really just start. Just don't just sit around and go like, oh yeah, I have this idea. Like we could maybe we'll take like 5 years to maybe think about it, whatever. And it's like, I'm sure there's things that you look back on now and you're like, I wish we'd planned for that, but you won't be able to see those things you should have planned for until you just start. And so that's one thing I really learned from just being around you, Christian, is like, just do it. Yeah. Just start, because if you don't start, you're never going to run into any problems. You're never going to overcome them. You're never going to get any better. And so that's really the inspiration I found through this podcast every week, getting to hear how you have just overcome obstacle after obstacle after obstacle.
Yeah, I got to thank Ken Burns for that. That was the advice he gave me. Just do not stop. Making a movie is solving a million problems and you can get discouraged, but just keep going. And I do think that is, if you're listening to this podcast and you're discouraged today, listen to what these guys have said. You will persevere if you just get up and determine to, and you will overcome those things. So it is encouraging, you're right, Jeff, to look back and be like, oh my gosh, I am able to do this. And you become what you aspire to become as you step forward and just do what needs to be done. And so I think that's great insight. I've really appreciated you guys being on here. Unfortunately, today we've got people with time constraints, and so we're going to have to bug out. But I really would love to have Jeff and Jason back on, and let's talk some more details of that final sound mix, because there's more to be said.
Anytime. I'd be happy to.
Awesome. Well, hey, everyone. Thank you for being on the podcast. And then thank you for listening to Documentary First, where we believe everyone has a story to tell, and you can be the one to tell it.
Yes, you can. Bye, everybody.